I'm doing this video to let people with autoimmune, especially veterans, know some information. When I'm speaking about autoimmune, I'm specifically discussing, well, not specifically, but broadly, I'm addressing various forms of leukemia, both lupuses, all systemic arthritis, I guess that's about it. But I gotta put this out there before I forget. Well, when I get around to it, I'll make a video, where I can present some information. I wish I had a good laptop where I could use Camtasia or some other software, to ingrain inside the video, or no, I'd be embed in the video while I'm talking, and my Coke bottle Scotch tape glasses, and my chubby pizza face, along with the actual thing that I'm talking about. But unfortunately, we've had so much stuff destroyed and hacked. I don't. We're trying, but people keep destroying stuff. I just got a great little mini PC. Only it disappeared for 2 days in Saginaw, Michigan, and I found out somebody's partitioned the hard drive. They wouldn't do this. Somebody partitioned the dang hard drive. So something that should run fairly decent at 8 gigs in a 256 solid state hard drive should work pretty good, pretty fast. SSDs are fairly fast. It doesn't. It lags because they partitioned the dang hard drive. And I can't unpartition it because the way they broke it up, I have a system partition. I have a partition for regular, program files. Oh, it's a 64 too. There's a 64-bit operating system. And then I have a third partition, excuse me, which is the backup. I don't normally do this. The only thing I can change is the backup, the size of the backup. The other partitions I can't change. Now, I can understand maybe 2 partitions. One is for the backup, which really is not going to take that much because it's just an image file of the hard drive. And the other one would be for system plus, program files and temp files for those programs. But it is what it is. I knew something was going to happen because it disappeared for 2 days. I knew the timing, when it hit U.S. soil, the company, the American company that was the shipper, actually the receiver, they would qualify as a shipping contractor. People just time things just right, so it disappeared over the weekend at UPS. And every time our stuff disappears, if it's electronic, it disappears for the weekend, it gets tampered with every single time. And this is also right across the street from Morley. Coincidence or not, I don't know. I'm just saying every time that this happens, somebody tampers with something. Last time this happened was my daughter's laptop that's property of her school. And somebody messed with the USB drivers. They're all deleted, including the driver for Ethernet for the RJ45. So the only thing we can use is Wi-Fi. And the same thing that our complex has done. This is not the internet company, Spectrum. You can only have one static IP assigned to a device in this complex. Everything else is Wi-Fi. I didn't see that in my lease. And so I'm telling people, don't move to Saginaw County because this kind of garbage goes on and nobody does a thing about it. This is not Spectrum. They don't force you to get one static IP, and then you run, oh shoot, I forgot the darn word. Shoot, I forgot the word. Oh, one of those moments. Anyway, a device that you branch off your internet connection. It's not a splitter. It's I can't remember the darn word. This happens from time to time. Sleep apnea plus whatever's going on with my blood. My blood's just, full of cholesterol and triglycerides and hemoglobin. It's odd. What's happening to my hemoglobin is kind of like I'm an adult onset G6PD, which is impossible. But my hemoglobin are apparently changing in size, becoming smaller. And then their lifespan is changing. All kinds of crazy stuff is going on. But anyway, I'm pretty sure that's the gene G64PD. Anyway, it means that their blood cells are different. It's an adaptation for people of Mediterranean African descent so that it's harder for malaria to attack them. It's the body adapting to exposure to the tsetse fly. But anyway, that's just food for thought. A pretty amazing thing that biology can do to protect people or even any animal over time. Genetics is quite an amazing thing. But anyway, so I forgot the darn word for that thing that always has flashing because the network is hitting. I can't remember the darn name of it. It's not a splitter, it's a thing. Anyway, so that's the only way that we can get, a semblance of IPs off of the one static IP. So basically what I'm saying is we can only connect one device to our modem. We can't connect multiple devices to our modem, even if we're using a what we have is a router / modem. You can't, even with this splitter, but it's not called a darn splitter. I can't believe I forgot the darn name of it. It's on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, even if you use one of those, you won't get a connection. You can only use Wi-Fi. And I believe this is the complex. I don't care if they threaten to evict me or something. Living in this place, they have put us through hell. Through hell. People living in here and then dealing with stuff breaking all the time. And then if we put in a request for it to be repaired, then we have to battle with them wanting to come in because they have friends who monitor what we're doing. We already know this from social services and from my attorney. So every time we go out, they say, oh, that's the only day we can come in. We've been through this crap for almost 3 years. And then we have the choice, hey, you can move out anytime and we'll be homeless. Because last time I was searching for a place for 9 months until we were forced in here by somebody applying and then people pushing us in here from the VA. I'm not saying the VA is responsible for all the things that have happened, but they sure as heck know about it. Anyway, so that's the problem. We can't connect multiple devices to our modem / router. Darn, I wish I could remember what that's called. I can't believe I forgot. It's like a splitter, but it's not. It's all Cat 5. I can't believe I forgot the name of the darn thing. Cisco makes a ton of them. Switch. Oh, thank God. I have a switch, a 6-port or 4-port switch. Even if you're using a switch off of the modem router, nothing will connect through Ethernet. You have to use Wi-Fi. That way people can hack you and screw with you. And it's not Spectrum. Spectrum doesn't do this. So, anyway, mumbling too long and too far away from my point. So I wanted to do this just so people out there with autoimmune would know some things. I've talked about ARUP Labs before, how them and other labs such as Quest Diagnostics, their ranges for all of their tests is CRP, ANA. I don't know about their RF factor, because particularly the VA, the one that's tested me for RF factor, they have their own tests in their lab. They don't send it out. So but for others, CRP also they do internally. But now companies that use Quest Diagnostics or ARUP Labs, the ranges for their ANA and for their CCP, they're kind of high. They assert that they should be high, above 19, for a positive diagnosis of those inflammatory markers because they exist in the general population. Well, I've talked about the study before where a couple of PhDs and a couple of MDs have argued that there's a lot of laboratory diagnostics are going in the wrong direction because they're having high ranges for autoimmune diseases to look for the inflammatory markers. Now, autoimmune diseases such as the ones I spoke before are incredibly difficult to diagnose. Incredibly difficult. Some people don't know they have them until they're already in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, and they start to become deformed. It's hard to get up, hard to move around. You start to get those ruts and depressions inside of your joint, the ball of the joint, which causes it to slip, and then it starts to degrade and destroy the soft tissue, which is supposed to create a soft barrier, a cushion. So then you get bone on bone, which makes things even worse because then it becomes polished and it starts to crack. And then it's a process, a destructive process. So then the point becomes, after 5, 10, 20 years of these various autoimmunes, depending on what system they're hitting, some are more clever, like lupus can hit multiple systems at once or only one system. Rheumatoid generally seems to hit one system plus the bones, the joints. But it can get pretty complicated. And we've had people in my family that in the years, preceding their passing away, they can't move anymore. Their joints are deformed. They have to be carried around. I mean, it's nasty. These things are horrible, and it's just, I hate to say it's a blessing, but it's a good thing that a couple of people in my family have had Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. That way, when this happens, they don't have to deal with the pain. They sleep a lot, and they're given pain meds that help reinforce that sleep. I don't want to say it's a blessing, but I'll say it helps to minimize the pain. Not only the emotional pain of not being able to move anymore, but the physical pain of these joints becoming deformed. And it's horrible. You see similar things with things like MS. When the point when all the nerves and the muscles are, the degradation is really bad and it starts to affect the joints too. Or in polio, really horrible cases of polio that have damaged the muscles, the underlying tissue, and then the joints also start to deform. These are some of the most unfriendly, destructive kind of diseases to get. It's nothing anybody wishes for, even for a couple of hundred or a grand or two or three a month. Nobody wishes for this stuff. Nobody. But there's a lot of people coming back that have this. Lupus. In the beginning, they were thinking that people were, seemed if you had a family likelihood of lupus, I don't want to say likelihood, if you had a family presentation of lupus, it's not genetic, that those markers would be activated if you were in the theater in the Middle East for a long time because of all the toxins in the air and the sand. It's just all over the place, especially Kuwait, Iraq, and Saudi. You gotta remember those 600 oil well fires. And then in Afghanistan, it's all over the place. Yemen, because all the garbage that we were burning up until 2013 or 2014, when finally those rules, bases begin to obey DOD rules about garbage and chemical waste. So people would have stuff burned sometimes right next to their hooch. Nothing you can do. Also very destructive. It'd be like stuff that people dealt with in Afghanistan and Yemen would be like the first Gulf War, what they dealt with. All those troops that were on ground. All those guys and gals who were boots on ground there, they breathe the most toxic air that somebody could breathe, It'd be like working in a coal mine 24 hours a day for several months. That's the equivalent. Just toxic. It only took, for those guys, it only took 30 years, a little over 30 years for something to happen. For our Vietnam vets, it took over 50 years. VA is always behind the curve. But so people with these systemic diseases, Quest Diagnostics, Quest Labs, Quest Labs Incorporated, and ARUP Labs, their ranges are higher than other laboratory proprietary tests. And, ARUP sued the FDA, saying the FDA didn't have a right to say that they should have certain ranges and certain variables set up and certain criteria for the, experiment to set up the experiments to get particular readings. So they sued the FDA. And, I'm really thankful because some of those laws that have been talked about now for 10 years, I'm thankful to the Republicans who put them out there, particularly Republican representative from Indiana. I'm thankful to that. He's a Navy vet and a doctor. So maybe somebody we should listen to. But pharmaceutical companies and labs, they are fighting against this tooth and nail. Now we come to the very idea, the main topic, the main discussion of this video. And that's the fact that, Quest Diagnostics and all of their daughter companies and sister companies, they have their issues with patients. They've sold patient tissue without permission. They've disposed of it in ways that do not protect the integrity of the DNA of the people that they took the tests from. And they have not properly protected patient data in the transfer of these tissues and the testing and the encoding in digital format. Lots of stuff there. And then the fact that they were double billing federal and state governments. I've discussed this in another video. And a lady that turned them in for it, they basically tried to destroy her life. And so it's interesting that they're on par with the ARUP Labs that says the FDA doesn't have the right to tell me how to do my blood testing for people. I can set the standards and I can set the ranges because I know. Because it's my test. They don't give a darn about the patients. Well, it's come to my knowledge now. Again, if I get a chance, I'll try to figure out a way to put all this evidence up. I hate taking a video with the camera, with the lens focused on paperwork. I don't know. Just to me, it seems unprofessional. But it's different if you're gathering intelligence or wearing a wire for some criminal investigation. That's different. But apparently, ARUP Labs has multiple contracts with the VA. I mean, multiple. As far as I could tell so far, they have 4 contracts with 4 different VIZN. Now, a VIZN is a Veterans Integrated, or no, SN, Veterans Integrated Specialized Net. I forgot the darn acronym, but anyway, it's a health network. VAs they're created just like HMOs, and you'll have a giant, or would it be a PPO? Provider. I forgot what a PPO stands for. Provider something organization. Anyway, you got the HMO as a health maintenance organization. I used to sell insurance. I should remember this stuff. But anyway, the VA is created, each VA network. Like I said, I don't know exactly how many VIZN or SNs you have. I think it's a ZN. Anyway, you have so many of them. I don't know, maybe 20 or 30. No, it had to be more than that. Probably around 60 or 70, because sometimes you have multiple ones within a state, and other times you have one for different parts of 2 or 3 states. But they have contracts with multiple visit networks to do the testing for these autoimmune conditions. So this means potentially, if we're following the study by those couple of MDs and couple of PhDs, that these high ranges are losing, 11% or more of people that do genuinely have autoimmune conditions because they're too high, because they haven't done proper research in the presentation of these markers in the healthy community, the non-autoimmune community. They haven't done proper research because they don't care. They only care about this, the money getting paid testing people. Proper research, real legitimate science that's not driven by corporate greed, would do a couple 100,000 people assessment. Don't ask me how, but that's their job. That's why they get paid, how much? 2, 3, 4, 500 per vial? Who knows? But they would find out the level of average people at different ages, or even different, maybe age cohorts, like people who are 20, people who are 30, people who are 40. They would get an idea of, several thousand people in each age cohort, and what, the level of the markers are for these inflammatory markers. And then they would be able to input them into their lab test to have a correct range that doesn't disenfranchise, derail, and dismiss people, especially veterans who are legitimately ill. And another interesting thing about this, I hate playing politics now, because I've loved politics my whole life. And one reason why I love the military, and I've learned to roll with, when one party's in the White House and the other one leaves, you roll with it, you adapt. You find good and bad in every single person who sits in the Oval Office. Some are more controversial than others. Some are more moral than others. And some have, their focus on what particular issues are important to them changes. Well, I just don't like to get involved in it anymore. But when I find out things, I follow the money. That's what you're trained to do. And certain kinds of investigation careers or trajectories, we'll say, you follow the money. And I found with ARUP that, not the organization, it appears they're trying to block that. I can't find that data. But ARUP gives a ton of money to Democrats. I mean, a ton of money. And it looks like at one point, employees, a couple of them gave money to President Trump. A couple of people, the vast majority, they give a lot to the Democratic Party. They support associations that give money to the Democratic Party. It's interesting. And they pay lobbyists. They have a couple of lobbyists who used to be involved in the federal government and healthcare, big surprise, who are now lobbyists for them. And it's interesting, the bulk of the money that they give to these lobbyists who reside in D.C. mostly, and who try to butter up to like the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, or I think actually in the House, I think it's a subcommittee. But on the veteran-oriented committees and subcommittees, that's who these guys butter up to, or gals, could be either. And they butter up to them, and that's how they get a nice fat VA contract. They throw, they play games to make sure that they're the bidder who gets chosen, because generally these kind of bidding is silent bidding. But there's ways around that. And, all the while, they're donating money to various Democratic representatives and senators, buttering up, especially to the House, because the House has got a lot of pull with Veterans Affairs, and buttering up those guys. I mean, I don't want to say buttering them up, the guys and gals. We'll say reaching out to them and making sure they get that VA contract. And their latest contract, what a big surprise, was awarded in 2020. Whoa, what a big surprise. And they've given a ton of money to a ton of Democrats, to a ton of, Democrat National Committee, Association of Democratic Lab Scientists, or something like that. I mean, associations so you can try to hide the money trail. That's all they are, essentially. Try to, cast doubt on where money actually came from. This way, corporations and one percenters can hide, saying, hey, I'm going to go with whoever is elected. Yeah, but secretly, write that check out to that guy over there, but give it to that agency, because they'll funnel the money and give it to him or her. Okay. And so now what I'm finding, it makes me more disappointed in former President Biden, because he let this garbage go on during his presidency. He passes the PACT Act, but then in the backdoor channels of Congress, labs like Quest or ARUP, they get big fat VA contracts, knowing that they have higher ranges, because everybody knows they sued the FDA. I mean, ARUP did, saying the FDA doesn't have any right to tell them how to run their tests. That's their decision. They designed the test. They should have the ability to only set the range, and only them. Well, they didn't use good science to develop it. If I was in Congress and that I was on that committee, I would say, you guys need to go back to square one and do the right research. That way you're not, this isn't like shooting cans in the desert where you're going to put your gun to your hip and say, hey, look what I can do. No, you do exact science. Go and do the dang research to find out the presence of the presence of these inflammatory markers in the non-autoimmune illness population, the healthy population. Go and do better science, then come back and we'll talk. But don't expect to get the bid, because we're in the process of choosing the next person right now. But that didn't happen. So we see opposing, contradicting actions. We got the PACT Act. That's great. That gives Vietnam vets the 50 to 60 year justice that they've been waiting for. The first Gulf War deployments. Those people get their 30 to 35 year. Actually, I take it back. It's not 50 years. We're looking at 65 years. I have to sit down. It's like 65 we went in there. I had to sit down. It's longer than that. Anyway, these people are finally getting their justice so long afterward, you know? And kind of like a lot of those old timers from World War II, still waiting for their medals. Code talkers, you know, Marines, sailors who saved the day on a submarine, Army veterans that saved their platoon or their squad, aviators, Tuskegee Airmen that people didn't know their name, aviators that their plane went down, and just now people are getting to giving out the medals. People like that waited a lifetime to get the honor they're deserved. Well, now they're getting it. But yet, backroom, kind of like back office processing. I find a lot of these companies I don't like, you know? As far as India, I know some people don't like foreign call centers, but in my experience, Indian and mostly Indian and Filipino call centers, I find that they tried their best to improve the customer experience. But then you call American call centers, you're more apt to get somebody that, one, doesn't care, or two, has had a bad day because they're probably getting less than 15 or 16 an hour, which means they can barely live, or three, or no, that's four, or four, you're going to find that somebody just has a bad attitude. Hey, it's a job. I'm looking for a better one. I don't really care. I just want to go home. You're going to get somebody like that. And you know what they do when you push the buttons? Click. So, but overseas, I've found between India and the Philippines, all the call centers do is limit what people can do. You know, kind of pushing the whole colonizer type. Well, we know business better. We know what the customer needs better, so we're going to limit what you can do. But in actuality, if they knew the cultures they're dealing with, you're going to find a higher mean education value within India and the Philippines than you are in the U.S. You're going to find in the Philippines and in India, people started working earlier and more important jobs than you do in the U.S. In the Philippines and in India, when you're in, as soon as you're old enough in high school, you may even have a business or you're doing some kind of small business work. You're not working at McDonald's in a window or taking care of Mrs. Smith's lawn and brushing Mr. Jackfruit's, raking Mr. Jackfruit's lawn to get rid of the leaves. No, over there, you're running a family business, maybe a small store, maybe selling vegetables, fruit, fish. And then you may be doing some kind of more professional work, depending if you're male or female, driving a motorcycle service or a taxi or working in a bank or something like that, before you start a real professional job. As a matter of fact, some of those jobs, like working in a bank, if you don't have some kind of college background, they won't hire you. So I think that we should stop judging through the lens of colonial thinking. Now, I'm not a liberal at all. I'm a moderate, and I call out both sides as I see it, because I think the important thing is following God's word, following the examples that all of these religious teachers through history have taught us, especially Jesus, especially the great rabbis, especially the saints, about what is right and what is wrong. So I'm neither Republican nor Democrat, neither liberal nor conservative. But what I will say is that you can find a lot of responsibility in these other countries, and we need to stop thinking through the lens of we're superior to them. We all need each other. I'd like to see in my country, America, let's try to go and make something out of cassava without getting cassava from the tropics, either latitudes of Puerto Rico, Mexico, or places like Hawaii or the Philippines. Good luck trying to get that cassava. Or bananas, same thing. Good luck. So anyway, that being said, we should give people a lot more credit and give them a lot more responsibility, because in the end, we may be pleased. But anyway, back to the topic at hand. So these labs, they're disenfranchising people, and a lot of veterans, their testing is looking like, oh, I don't think your disease is one of the autoimmune. I think maybe it's a fatty liver disease, or portal vein hypertension that can cause damage to the gallbladder and the liver. These are some of the examples for me, which are ridiculous. Some things, finding that autoimmune can cause fatty liver disease, because it certainly doesn't come from my diet. And anybody who knows me knows that. I don't have a high-fat diet. I never have. I'm not a big red meat person. The starches, I'm not a big starch person. There's other explanations for high triglycerides and high cholesterol. Autoimmune. Autoimmune targeting the pancreas, the kidneys, and the liver. Whoa, we're seeing inflammatory markers related to them. And certainly hypertension. If somebody has primary hypertension and they are a PACT Act veteran, meaning they deployed to the Middle East, you're supposed to be getting paid. Why am I not? Why are you not? Did you know that? They may tell you, oh, you have to file a claim. That's not true. The PACT Act empowered the local VA to do everything locally. I'm not saying you don't need to file a claim for other things, but when it is a PACT Act illness, it's supposed to be done locally. Locally. Not through regional either. Some people will try to say, oh yeah, it's supposed to be regional. No. Read the act, what it says. And then they'll say, oh no, you have to already have a claim in the system and be rated. No, that's not true. What I'm seeing is a pattern of the current VA trying to disenfranchise people. And I'm not saying that, veterans should make a paycheck off of, things that they got from their service, or to try to stretch the truth. But come on. The past 75 years, us veterans have been exposed to a lot of garbage. And we deserve some kind of compensation, because we have less of a quality of life. We can't be like our grandfathers, 60 or 70, going out hunting, go climbing and trailblazing and hiking, because a lot of us have, serious issues, maybe even autoimmune, because we've been exposed to so much garbage the past 75 years. Especially the past 60. I'm not saying there wasn't garbage in World War I and World War II and Korea, but from Vietnam forward, we've got the monopoly on exposing our service members, male and female, to garbage. We've got the monopoly. And I don't mean just garbage burning. I mean garbage in the chemicals that we use and that we dispose of. Garbage being burned right next to us. I mean, sometimes you can find living environments that you're exposed to all kinds of pesticides. And, how many people have been in a pod when you're in the Middle East and there's a rat trap somewhere around the door? Well, there's poison inside of there, and as it gets hot, it gets aerosolized. It goes into the air. Or if you've been in Afghanistan, Yemen, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi, again, the crap that goes into the dust. It doesn't just disappear or wash away in the rain. It keeps getting filtered back into the dust. It rains, goes back into the dust, it dries, becomes aerosolized again. It rains, goes back down to the dust. It repeats. For the desert to clean itself, you're talking about hundreds of years. Hundreds. And if you've been to the shorelines of Kuwait, you can see the damage. It's still there. There's no coral, there's no fish, there's no life. Got to go out a couple of miles offshore, from what I've been told, to get anything on a line or in a net. So, this being said, this is just, FYI. It's kind of a long video. I need to learn how to shorten my videos. But I hope this helps people with autoimmune. Look and see where your labs were done. If they're done with any of those two companies, it's your right to request a second opinion. Very few health providers are going to try to, prevent you from getting a second opinion. And if people say, oh, we only use this lab, then you say, I'm going to go to a different doctor. And they may say, oh, okay, so what? Then you can tell people that's their attitude. The provider should not choose the lab. The patient should. Maybe the patient wants to save money. Maybe the patient wants to, choose a lab that's near their home, so they're supporting a local business. Maybe the patient wants to know exactly how much the healthcare organization is paying for that lab. And again, they want to save money. There's all kinds of reasons. The patient should have the right. A health provider will say, well, patients don't know about this stuff. How do you know that? Most of you have never tried. Most of the patients can read a range. They can read a company profile. Some can even read an investor's speculation portfolio. Why not give us back some of our power and stop trying to control our healthcare future?